Welcome back. This week, yet another Freddie Gray prosecution bit the dust. So far, prosecutors for the Freddie Gray case have failed every prosecution. Colin, whatever happened to the promise of justice for this man?
Well, I think that, and we've talked about this a number of times, I think what we're dealing with here is a very unfortunate event. The fact that Freddie Gray was killed in the ambulance, and I think there's still a lot of debate about what happened, is very unfortunate. Now, having an unfortunate event and automatically jumping to the conclusion, like Baltimore City government did, that somehow all the officers involved needed to be prosecuted is proving. And I think the one thing that all these trials have had in common, and even up to and including comments made by the Gray family attorney, have been that the judge and the juries in all these trials have been very impartial and have delivered good opinions based on the evidence presented.
But the problem that you alluded to early in your comments was that the prosecutor and the mayor in this case jumped to conclusions. They jumped to conclusions before all the facts were in. And I think they were doing that personally to achieve some short-term gain of not having rioting in their city. And I'm thankful that we haven't had riots as these dismissals have come down. But I still think it is completely wrong to jump to those conclusions, because at some point, just like in other cases, somebody's going to bring, and they continue to bring Freddie Gray up as something bad that happened to a black man at the hands of the police department.
Okay, now, wait a minute. The elected officials, the state's attorney was a state person, wasn't the county, which Baltimore City is a county. My problem is the grand jury approved the indictments of those officers.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, the grand jury is a citizen grand jury. Mm-hmm. That grand jury is set and was set before this process even started. The grand jury is for so many months. Mm-hmm. They brought their grand jury in. What is the report that went to the grand jury that the grand jury indicted all those guys? I saw a guy on TV today, one of the neighborhood gentlemen that was very much, in the protest mode before, and he said, Marilyn Mosby failed to prosecute the men because she didn't have what she needed to get a conviction. And that's what he said.
But does what she needed to get a conviction even exist?
Well, that's what did she give the grand jury? The grand jury approved the indictments.
I would have to assume that whatever the grand jury got went to the court as well, unless some of the evidence was inadmissible.
Well, and there's a different level of it's not a reasonable doubt for a grand jury.
Yeah, but they still approved indictments. They approved indictments for 6 people.
Well, I think what Jim is saying is there's a different level of scrutiny that's applied to that initial agreement to indict by a grand jury and the actual trial.
There's plenty of grand juries that push forward an indictment where the trials end in dismissal.
If you were the chairman of a grand jury, would you have rushed it that way if you were a citizen juror?
I think that I would need to hear the instructions to me to say what my criteria was for pushing it forward or not. And in some cases, maybe I would. In some cases, I wouldn't.
In some cases,
I didn't answer your question on that one, did I?
In some cases, we have government agencies that will not indict when there is a clear indication of crimes being committed. But we'll leave that aside for now.
That'd probably be a good idea to leave it aside.
But I will say one thing.
Something to say about
I think that there is, and this has nothing to do with the trials, but it has something to do with human behavior. There is a positive coming out of this whole Baltimore thing. First of all, I think to a lot of community folks, it was a wake-up call what happened last year with the riots. And one of the things that I saw here recently that was very, very encouraging is when there was an anti-police, a Black Lives Matter protest in Baltimore, there was a whole line of neighborhood people standing in front of the police court and protecting them from anything happening to them. That's the sort of community action that needs to occur to put an end to all the crap that we have going on in this country. And it takes both sides. People act like the police need to fix things, but communities need to fix themselves before they can expect the police to be able to behave differently as well.
I completely agree with you on that, and I think that local politics is the key, and I think that you can't There's some things where we need to act as individual communities. There's some things where we need to act as counties or states, and there's sometimes where we need to act as a larger federal government. And this, I think, is a perfect example of one of those things where you need to have some structure from the higher ups at the federal level, but I think you need to fix it internally.
And at some point, to dovetail on what you're saying, at some point we all, and I mean all of us, need to act like Americans and stop thinking about every single thing that makes one of us different
Does
than
that go
every.
into the political parties too?
Absolutely.
It should, but it
does
doesn't.
both the Democrats and the Republicans?
Yes.
Absolutely.
We're Americans first.
We're all Americans?
First.
Yes.
Boy, what a novel idea.
I know, isn't it?
Isn't that
Crazy.
Somebody should tell the
What an
Congress and the
idea.
senators that, but that's
What a
another story.
great idea.
Yeah.
Oh, alrighty, we're going to leave it there. Up next, Fast Five. Stay tuned.